Black Legion, Legion of Black, formerly Horus's sons, the Sons of Horus, formerly the Lunar Wolves, Wolves of Luna. This year, I began collecting and painting a Chaos Space Marine force for 2nd edition 40k, the core being from Abaddon's Legion, but strangely, I haven't added any regular Legionnaires yet, until now. Abaddon was first, Terminators were next, and then I deviated down a couple of tangential paths as I cavorted first with Nurgle, and later Khorne. Night Lords of course drew me in, with this champion, and then a Dreadnought. Now, I could call this a distraction, but really, in 2nd edition, there's nothing wrong with having a pick and mix Chaos army. A cocktail of all sorts of preferences and leanings. Indeed, I could field it now and it wouldn't break any rules as far as the Codex is concerned. But I felt moved to add a squad of Legionaries, or simply Chaos Space Marines as we used to call them, to my collection. Although troops choices were not a thing back then, squads were, and these to me have been, and always will be, the core choice for Chaos Space Marines, much like the tactical squad for Imperial Space Marines. Chaos Space Marine squads have been served by several model ranges. You are probably familiar with the plastic multipart kit that served the game from 2002. It was an excellent kit, and I have many of these in my collection, painted as Night Lords. Amongst these, I have a couple of metal sculpts, which were released in 1996 alongside the Chaos Codex for 2nd edition 40k, and it is from this range of miniatures I wanted to construct a squad. In 1996, Games Workshop released this box set, 7 Metal Chaos Space Marines, with a range of torso sculpts, and a few construction options, if you factor in the plastic arms and bolters that came with it. The set also came with these plastic backpacks. As you can see, there were 3 different sculpts. Designed by Ali Morrison, the set was shown off in White Dwarf 199, along with the means to order them, using the codes at the back of the magazine, via the now sadly obsolete Games Workshop mail order. Orders could be mailed in using a form such as this, or you could order over the phone, though I suppose any phone numbers you might find in an old White Dwarf would be sadly defunct.
Hello?
Hello, I'd like to place an order for some miniatures, please. 1 Chaos Space Marine Las Cannon body, code 70314/5. 1 Las Cannon backpack, 70314/8.
Look, wait.
1 Las Cannon, 70314/6.
Listen.
Oh, sorry, I forgot the arm. Silly me. How can you build a las cannon without an arm?
Can I just stop you there? I don't know where you've got this number from, but it's not a mail order service. It might have been at one point, but it isn't anymore.
But...
I'm blocking your number.
Oh. 011591 40,000. Oh, silly me. I got a digit wrong. 0115.
The set in question came with a Chaos Champion with Power Claw, 4 regular Marines which could be armed with a bolter and or a bolt pistol, a flamer-wielding chap, and a gentleman with a missile launcher. 7 might seem like a strange number unless you're into Nurgle. I mean, why not 10 like a regular tactical squad? I'll address this point later when we look at the Codex entry. A find on eBay yielded these gorgeous miniatures. The price I paid per model was about the same as what I would pay for the current plastic Legionary box from Games Workshop. That fact made it entirely justified. Current plastic kits can jump in and out of whatever meta you might pursue. New rules come and go like a vapour in the wind. But 2nd edition will never change, like a rock in times of trouble. Plus, it's nostalgic, and that's priceless, along with the joy that comes with it. The lot I acquired came with contents, as far as I could tell, identical to those in this box, with the addition of an autocannon wielding Space Marine. as well as the torso and the autocannon. It has a metal left arm and a backpack with spare shells. The missile launcher gentleman has a backpack with spare missiles and lacks the usual extended vents. Helpfully, the heavy weapons come with an arm built in, unlike the Devastator squad weapons which require a plastic piece. With respect to these old miniatures, the fewer parts to glue together, the better. The Flamer Guy is the best example of this, coming in one piece, save for the backpack. Which is great because it means I don't need to source more arms and pauldrons. Those things are as common as hen's teeth these days. I like the range of silly headdresses amongst the regular Space Marines. Some have horns that join up, useful for training exercises in their downtimes, such as throw the skull through the hoop. This chap has a nice top knot of hair. I wonder if it's his own, fed through the helmet. This guy with the horns is one of my favourites. Simple, clean, and looking somewhat startled. And finally, there's another hairdo torso. I stripped the torsos of paint, but left the arms, weapons and backpacks as they were, since the previous owner only used a thin coat of paint, and scrubbing these small parts is fiddly to say the least. Of course, there were still some mould lines that had to go, which was a pain as always, a necessary evil to be sure. The lot came with enough slaughter bases, not that I need any more, I have a huge bag of these spare. However, they had some residual superglue which I removed with my file. I also used this to rough up some edges before supergluing parts together. Having a rough surface improves the adhesion of the glue, and pinning is useful as well. I always rough up and sometimes pin, it depends on the miniature. So, yes, I suppose I am a roughing up and pinning kind of guy. Both techniques are pretty much essential with these metal backpacks, since, for some reason, the heavy weapon guys didn't come with the useful stud. When it came to basing the models, I bent the slaughter tab with a pair of pliers. This way, it formed a pressure fit with the base, requiring less superglue to achieve adequate adhesion. As you would expect, the rules for Chaos Space Marines and Imperial Space Marines in 2nd edition 40k have a large degree of overlap, but they also have their differences. The first notable similarity is their stats, which are identical whether they have pledged their allegiance to the Emperor or the Chaos Gods. Like me, this may be a Mandela effect moment for you. Don't Chaos Space Marines have an extra leadership point compared with regular Marines? Not in this edition they don't. That was 3rd edition, and others that followed. Like Imperial Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines benefit from the rapid fire special rule, allowing them to fire bolters, bolt pistols, and storm bolters twice? Looks like I found a typo. Chaos didn't have access to storm bolters. They were twin bolters, or combi bolters. However, unlike Imperial Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines did not have the break test special rule. With the same models, you could choose to field your Space Marines as veterans. These benefited from a +1 to weapon skill, ballistic skill and initiative. They also had the disperse formation special rule and the infiltration special ability. The former meant they only needed to be 4 inches apart rather than the usual 2 inches. The latter allows a player to place models anywhere on the battlefield after an opponent has deployed, providing they are out of line of sight of all enemy models. White Dwarf 205 had an article about veteran Space Marines and encouraged you to convert your miniatures to reflect their enhanced abilities. But whichever option you chose, either Chaos Space Marines or veterans, both count as squads. Surely that's obvious, you may say, but squads was an actual designation. This was not quite the same as troops from 3rd edition onwards, since squads in 2nd edition could be Terminators, or one of the cults such as Plague Marines or Thousand Suns. Anyway, at least 25% of your army's points had to be spent on squads. Chaos Space Marines are 25 points per model. A squad can consist of between 3 and 9 Space Marines, and may be led by an aspiring champion. We'll return to him later. The war gear is a bolt pistol, frag grenades, and power armor. Each Space Marine can be given a bolt gun for an extra 3 points. Any model may take assault weapons such as chainswords, power axes, and hand flamers, to name a few. Up to 3 models can have weapons from the heavy weapons list and or the special weapons list. Crack grenades can also be equipped for 3 points per model. A nice, flexible unit if ever there was one. The veteran Chaos Space Marines are 35 points apiece, but the squad can only be 3 to 5 models, plus an aspiring champion if desired. Their wargear options are the same as the other squad, save they can take 2 heavy or special weapons. Aspiring champions are veteran Space Marines and so have the same profile. They can be given a wargear card, Terminator armor, assault weapons, grenades and special weapons. If he does choose Terminator armor, he is forbidden to infiltrate if he is part of a veteran squad. I guess skulking around isn't really possible with such a bulky attire. Aspiring champions may be given a Chaos mark, Khorne for 15 points, Nurgle for 10 points, and Slaanesh for 5 points. Khorne grants an armor save of 2+, Nurgle a +1 bonus to toughness, and Slaanesh an immunity to psychology and an exemption from taking break tests. Marks of Tzeentch cannot be taken by aspiring champions. I guess he doesn't care to bless such lowly folk. So with the squad primed black, it was time to paint them. I'm showing you how I painted the champion, but largely, I used the same scheme on all of these. It's more or less the same method as I used with the Terminators some months ago, so if you want further examples of this scheme, do go and watch that video. As usual, I start with a base coat of Thunderhawk Blue mixed with some black, and apply this to most of the armour. The black from the prime acts as the shade. Then I do a rough highlight of Thunderhawk Blue on the armour edges, and where the rims, which will be gold, meet the rest of the armour. This is just to add some emphasis to these areas of detail. In some cases, I sketch on some lines with this blue across the flat areas to look like scratches and scrapes. By the time I have finished the first highlight, enough of it is dry to allow the addition of the second highlight, which I do with Fenrisian Grey. Again, I focus on the sharpest edges and some areas where I painted Thunderhawk Blue. All the areas that will be gold get a base of Vallejo flat brown. Many photos from 2nd edition have Black Legion with silver trims, but I preferred the gold, so that's what I have chosen. When the brown is dry, I use a thin coat of Dwarven Gold on all the same areas as before. For the fingertips of the claw, I begin with burnt Cadmium Red, a Vallejo paint. This was also applied to the pipes across his chest, on the underside of the power claw, and on the backpack. And while this was drying, I painted some of the other backpack details Caliban Green. Before painting the skulls a bone colour, I wanted the base to be a brown grey, which I achieved by mixing tan earth, another Vallejo colour, with a touch of black. This was then applied to the skulls, on his armour and his backpack, as well as the horns on his helmet. I then add some white to the mix, and painted all but the deepest recesses of the skulls, as well as the raised parts of the horns. The highlight was done next with dark sand by itself. With some more tan earth, I painted some short lines perpendicular to the edges on the bolt pistol pouch and any other leather areas. This gives it a cracked leather look in my opinion. And although I didn't do this here, the cracked look can be made more effective by using different lengths of scratches and by painting these with different shades of brown. Now to ramp up the saturation on the red areas. With dark vermilion, I paint the claws on the power claw, save the indents between the joints. I use the same principle on the ridges on every pipe I painted earlier. Next, to shade the gold, I use a liberal wash of Reikland Fleshshade, one of the few washes I used on this paint job. If you have watched my other videos, you will doubtless have seen this before, so there's no need to wax lyrical here. On the pipes on the backpack, where I painted Caliban Green before, I use a mix of Caliban Green and Scorpion Green, which is a bright green colour that Citadel don't produce anymore, although I think Moot Green is the closest modern equivalent. Anyway, I leave some dark green lines between the segments to give some contrast. As you can no doubt tell, I much prefer this method of painting rather than mid-tone, wash, mid-tone, highlight. Paint the deepest areas the darkest colour, and then as you move up, make the colour progressively lighter and brighter. But that's just my preference. Next is the metallics, and of course I'm using Gunmetal by Army Painter, mainly on the bolt gun and some details on the backpack. I had a comment the other week about the bottomless nature of my pot of gunmetal, which made me smile. It must have been going for 10 years or so now. The next highlight stage on the red was some orange red by Vallejo mixed with a spot of the previous red. I find highlights blend better when you have a touch of the previous paint mixed in with them. The final highlight on the red is achieved by mixing some Vallejo dark sand with the red to give a sort of flesh colour. But with such a thin line painted on the sharpest edges, it doesn't look too fleshy. I wanted a lazy solution to the eye lenses, so I painted them white first, followed by contrast Ork Flesh. Nothing fancy. And here's the finished article. I totally forgot to film the application of the decals, the silver edge highlight on the gold, and the basing, but suffice it to say, there's nothing done here that I didn't do in my previous videos. Drop me a comment below if you need some more detail sharing. So from this session, that's 9 Chaos Space Marines painted, an aspiring champion, 2 guys with heavy weapons, a flamer dude, and 5 more with bolters. I tried to vary their poses somewhat, which is why only 2 are holding their bolters with 2 hands. 2 are going for the one-handed carry, and the hoop helmet chap is dual-wielding a bolter and a bolt pistol. Bolt weapons akimbo, something the Codex Astartes doubtless disapproves of, but these guys wipe their genetically enhanced bottoms with the Codex Astartes, so there's no issue here. If dual wielding is too rad for you, I think 40k might not be the tree you wish to bark up. Anyway, what the Codex does state is that I could take a single squad of 9 Marines, or I could break it down into 1, 2 or even 3 squads, and I like that flexibility, along with the nickel and dime point system of 2nd edition, which I much prefer to the modern all weapons are free business, but that's just my opinion. I am a product of my time, I suppose. Here's the guys for their group photos. In conclusion, I am pretty pleased with how these guys turned out. They gel well with Abaddon and the Terminators, and will make a solid core to my army. I do have some more metal models on the back burner, so I expect to see some reinforcements for these. Moreover, I have also been painting some reinforcements for the Plague Marines and Khorne Berserkers. Initially, I was going to give them their own video, but I may be treading on old ground and I hate to make my content too repetitive. Watch this space. We'll see what happens. Anyway, thanks for watching again. I hope you got something from it. I get so many kind messages from many of you on my videos, and it really helps to motivate me in these projects. This Chaos Army has been going for about 6 months now, amongst other things I've been working on, whilst I have a family and a day job. Spinning plates, I suppose. But I'm not finished with Chaos yet. Expect tanks, and demons, other cults, and special characters to come. Stay tuned if that kind of thing bakes your biscuit. If you want regular updates, why not check out my Instagram? And with that, I had better go paint some more minis. Take care, and thanks for watching. Fear the Legion, Black Legion, they will shoot you in your nether region. In melee they will give you a squeeze. And Black Legion, Black Legion, Abaddon's Legion. Black Legion, want sons of Horus. Black Legion, no legions like the Black Legion, Black Legion. Black Legion, not many words rhyme with Legion, maybe Norwegian or Glaswegian, but they're not to do with Black Legion, Black Legion. Black Legion.